What's up, millennials? Today we're going to have a beautiful chat with Gonçalo, who's one of my subscribers, and this guy just knows a lot about the green economy, so we are going to be talking about that. Gonçalo, why don't you introduce yourself for a second?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Gonçalo. I'm a Portuguese PhD student. Actually, my PhD is in Glasgow, but I'm currently in Lisbon. My topic of my PhD is on bioeconomy, and of course that translates a lot into the green transition and the green energy sector.
Okay, cool. So you have been investing as well since a couple of months or weeks, or when did you start investing? Or have
So
you already started?
I have planned my buffer already, so that I will have that by the end of this month, and by the end of this month is when I will start investing with the salary that I will receive this month.
Cool.
So that is when I'm going to start actually.
Did you think of any strategy you're going to use for your investing life and your investing career?
Yes. So, well, from talking to you a bit and from your videos, I felt that the best plan for and the best strategy for my investment would be a monthly type of investment rather than a just big dump into into investing.
Yeah.
So my strategy is going to be monthly investments, and with the buffer already prepared, that should just be very simple and just easier because it's kind of something you don't have to think a lot about.
So let me ask you, why did you actually start investing? What made you say, well, right now I haven't been investing for like years and years, but why do you now want to start investing?
So I thought about starting investing or starting on this investment road trip kind of because I was studying the bioeconomy, I was studying the green transition, and I was seeing that the market was changing a lot. So the electrical market was changing a lot, and a lot of Europe was transitioning to a different kind of electrical economy, and the governance strategies were going to change. So if this was a turning point in my head, if this was a turning point for the European Union and for at a global scale as well, I felt that if I had the money that was just sitting there doing nothing, I could most likely invest and promote this green transition, which I also believe in. So it's kind of a mixture of my own beliefs being translated into investments, but at the same time, also taking advantage of the knowledge that I have started receiving from my PhD.
Sounds like a pretty smart move. Do you have like a certain strategy you're going to use for your investing career, or?
So, well, as I said, I plan on investing monthly and long term. So
Mhm.
I think that my idea of investing is low risk,
Yeah.
meaning that I would be interested in investing long term and having in index funds or ETFs as my main source of or as the main recipients of my investments. And after that, after I'm become a bit more knowledgeable about the market, continue investing on index funds, but making sure that I know what I believe in terms of my investments, and that I am investing on the things that I believe are going to grow. And I think that comes with experience and knowledge um, after a while.
So with regards to those companies you believe in, you of course know a lot about the green economy, the bioeconomy. Do you know any companies you're already looking at, public companies that might be interesting to you to invest in, or are you just going to stick to ETFs just to have like baskets of companies to invest in?
Yeah, so I believe a bit more in the concept of ETFs themselves, especially because the European Union is still struggling with the concept of upscaling their own companies. Upscaling means a company that is small and, for example, that exists in your city or in your country, and that provides for that city and country. For them to upscale is for them to have more and more ability to export into different countries or even into an international global market. So the EU struggles a lot with that, and it's one of the main issues that they are tackling at the moment in terms of the green transition, because we have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of research, and we have a lot of innovation. What we are lacking is that the companies in Europe are able to then transpire that knowledge worldwide, which is what the USA and China, for example, were able to do very easily, because there's also less regulations in terms of how they can more easily upscale. So that's why the EU is now focusing a bit on that.
Do you think regulation is the main issue here, to see the difference between the European Union and China and the US on the other hand?
Yes, especially what a lot of companies look for is a place for them to easily pop up, let's say,
Yeah.
for them to easily give birth to other smaller companies or their own company. And in Europe, it's just very hard to do that, because there are a lot of regulations, and I mean, we've all heard of fiscal paradises and stuff like that. So that is like kind of a concept around the building and the birth of enterprises as well, because a place where you can build easily a company without many hurdles, without a lot of bureaucracy, and without a lot of payments, that's where the companies are going to be settling in and then upscaling to other countries.
So do you think we need to have like less regulation and just say, well, just have a free market or something like that, let the companies try and figure out what they want to see if we can upskill that way? Or how can we upskill within the European Union, you think?
So yeah, so that's basically the main. That's one of the directions in which my PhD is going.
Okay.
I feel like bureaucracy is definitely detrimental for a lot of companies, and I'm not sure if the free market is a concept that could be fully applied to the EU, because the institutions that already exist in the EU and the policies that already exist in the EU are already very, very strict. So you cannot really just take it all down and start over because it's already institutionalized. However, what you can do is make sure that the policies that are created, the new policies that are created, and the amendments to older policies are done in synergy or in symbiosis with the companies themselves, with the industry. So the idea is for the innovators and the companies to come together with the policymakers, and so that they work for each other instead of working and that they work together for each other instead of just working by themselves for one another without actually knowing what each other needs in terms of the documents and in terms of what they create.
Right. So with regards to your PhD, can you tell us a little bit more about that, what that is going to entail exactly, what you are specifically doing?
Yeah, so basically my PhD is, the research that I'm going to be doing is mostly inductive research, and it's mostly qualitative research. So the data that I'll be gathering will be from people who are already in the environment or already in specific companies or in institutions, for example, the European Commission or the European Union. What I will do is gather information from them and see if there is a pattern in the discussions that we have. In that pattern, I'm going to find what concepts and what topics they mostly talk about, and what issues they see with the direction in which those concepts or topics are going. Of course, I'm going to be looking directly at bioeconomy, and that means the green transition and the green economic growth. And so what I will be focusing on is mostly the types of energies that are going to substitute coal-based current energies.
So what is exactly the goal of all of that qualitative research?
So the goal of my research is to provide a framework for the European Union, or for the biggest institution that we can get it to go to be able to see that with the symbiosis that I plan to present between policymakers and innovators, that framework is something that the European Union can use to make sure that there is a flow of between when a company starts and when a company is institutionalized and legitimized as a company itself.
Okay. With regards to a global perspective, what do you think? Is there like a problem like right now with the bioeconomy? Is there like I don't know. Do we need a certain solution for a certain problem?
Yes. So there are several problems with the coal-based industry. Of course, we all know about climate change. We all know about biodiversity losses. But the fact is that there are also resource issues regarding the fossil fuels themselves. And of course, there's also climate changes associated to a lot of things, but mostly the accumulation of plastic and trash everywhere in the world, to a point where we were exporting our own trash in Europe to other countries. And Brazil had a huge, gigantic landfill just full of trash from people from other countries. So this is problematic, and we cannot have this without the solution of this trash being fully at least decomposable, and that we can make sure that it doesn't re-enter the ecosystems in the form of, for example, microplastics.
Do you have a possible solution for this problem already, or are you going to wait for the qualitative research to come up with a solution?
So a lot of companies are already coming up with the specific solutions for this, when you think about biofuels, and when you think about creating products that don't involve the so basically, let me just explain what microplastics are. Microplastics is when you have something that is made of plastic, and the degradation of that plastic never stops, meaning that the plastic just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller in size to a point where it's microscopic. And so it just exists in the ecosystem without it being able to leave the ecosystem and without us being able to see it. So if that happens, it's just continuously around the ecosystem. So what happens is, if you find products and if you find materials that can be degraded, that is one of the solutions for this problem. When you find biofuels that aren't releasing gas emissions, harmful gas emissions that provoke the greenhouse effect, when we find these fuels, and when we already know that we can use them to produce electricity, to move planes, cars, and to even power your own houses, then we can change the fact that the coal and the extraction of coal or from other fossil fuels like natural gas. We can change the grid, making sure that the new energies that we are using are not causing the supply issue that the previous ones were causing. And it's not just in the use of these fuels, it's also in the extraction, in the treatment, in the storage. So all of these issues are also going to be applied to new energies, but the solutions for these new energies are supposedly and numerically, in terms of the studies that have already been done, better than the current solutions that we have, which are coal-based.
So where do you think the world is going to be in maybe 10? Do you think in 10 years we've already seen a large change in the world with regards to biodegradable things and stuff like that?
So that is one of the commitments of a lot of countries, is for 2030 to be to have a big reduction in the carbon footprint that they are leaving. But a lot of countries are mostly targeting 2050 as the not complete neutral carbon, neutral decarbonization. But carbon zero approaches are mostly targeting 2050, with 2030 being a kind of a transitioning period that is going to be actually supposedly already quite impactful on both the environment and a lot of supply chains.
Isn't 2050 just way too late though?
I mean, if you consider that the changes until 2050 are going to be incremental, and that we are going to see an exponential growth in the ability to target these issues, I think that the target of 2050 is not. It might look late, but the fact that the biggest effort is going to be made in these 10 years until 2030, and then from 30 to 50, we are going to see a smaller effort, just because the major effort that was already done here is already having big impacts on climate change and on most of the issues that I mentioned before. So it's kind of going to be like, if this is like a graph, if you imagine the graph here, and this is 2030 and this is 50, the decrease in carbon usage, or in carbon fossil fuels usage, is going to be like this, and this is 30, and then this until 50.
Right.
So this big dip here is already quite good and quite hopeful for the results for 2050. So 2030 is going to be a very important moment in history, because this is going to be the first planned energy transition that we're going to be doing. So if this works, we are going to be just a part of a major historical moment, in my opinion.
Just a random question, but what if it doesn't work? What if by 2030 we're in the same situation as we are in now and nothing has really changed? What is going to happen to the world, do you think?
Okay, so if nothing were to change, which is very unlikely, because most countries and most policymakers are already working very hard towards this change and have already applied and committed to these changes. So, but in case all of this went to was not able to be achieved, what would happen would be, I think that maybe some countries have not felt this as much yet, but all of the wildfires, all of the heat waves, all of the intense raining that is causes floods, the amount of snowstorms and blizzards, as we saw in Texas recently, that are continuous and that are very much stronger than previously. So all of these components are just going to happen on a more regular basis. And so countries that are already dealing with these issues and have dealt with them for centuries will see an increase in the amount of the periods throughout the year that they're going to experience these extreme weather events. That's just for starters. There's a lot of other issues regarding, of course, I mean, this is all related to climate change, but there's also like the melting ice caps. That's very important because they themselves are releasing a lot of carbon that they had stored. The increase in the water level is also affecting countries like India, for example, which is really. I think that I don't remember exactly the name of the city, but there was a city that is already sinking because of the fact that it was colonized by the Netherlands, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the way they planned this, the way they planned the city was to make it look like a city in the Netherlands, but it isn't the best layout for a city in that location. So they are already suffering from a rise in waters that is making it almost inhabitable.
I need to check that out. So let me tie this in a little bit. No, I'll check it out. So let me tie this a little bit in with investing as well, because I think 2020 was the year of electric vehicles, the year of Tesla, basically, because the price of Tesla stock went up like 7 times or something like that. What do you think of the whole movement from normal fossil fuel cars to electric vehicles? Do you think that could be a major solution to the problem we're facing right now?
That is a tough question. I don't think so.
Oh.
I mean, I think that the automobile industry is very important. I think it accounts for 23% or 20% of all of the gas emissions. But if you look at a lot of the initiatives that are happening around the world for the decarbonization, a lot of them require, for example, better planning of cities. And when you plan a city better, you make sure that there are more, or at least now we're making sure that there are more spaces for people to cycle, for example, for people to walk. So the amount of cars would, in my opinion, be reduced, especially in Europe. I think we don't we rely a lot on cars for a lot of things, and of course, electrical cars are going to be a major tipping point for a lot of people to transition into an idea of a green economy. A lot of people a lot of people show off, let's say, with cars. So cars could be also a moral show off from the fact that you're supporting the green economy. So but that's mostly how I see it. Of course, that doesn't mean that that's the reality of things. It's just an opinion, of course.
Right.
But I don't think I think that electric cars are very important. Electric cars are going to make a dent or are going to be very impactful in the transitioning into a greener economy. However, I am not sure if cars are going to be so important as they might appear right now, because we're also going to be developing a lot of stuff like AI, self-driving cars and stuff like that. And if we are already protected from the pandemic, then we will be able to I think there's going to be more sharing, like more car sharing, which was something that was already happening a lot before. So more car sharing, more infrastructure in cities for people to be able to go around.
Okay, so with regards to Tesla, because I think Tesla is going to tie that in quite nicely because they are focusing on electric vehicles. They focus on that ride sharing as well. The whole robo taxi networks is, of course, going to happen within probably a decade or probably even faster. But you also mentioned that EVs just account for like 20 to 23% of the problem. So should we be looking at other sectors out there as well?
Yes, of course, there are many sectors that are very important for this. Mostly, for example, of course, Tesla is a great motivator of the transition to electricity in the form of transportation. So that's a very positive impact that they have. And of course, they're also relating that to AI and machine learning, which is also something, or at least the algorithms that they are applying to their cars and to their systems are also very interesting and very contemporary. But there are other sectors that are majorly impactful in the green transition, especially aviation, for example. We all know the amount, or at least we are aware that traveling by plane is extremely impactful for the environment. And a lot of the efforts in the green transition that are being made are in aviation, because that is one of the major enterprises that we have in worldwide, and it's just extremely important for everyone. It was extremely important, especially before the pandemic, and now the pandemic has brought up the fact that not that many people need to travel as much, and that in terms of work, but in terms of leisure, it's still going to be very important, and a lot of people are going to have to use those means of transportation.
So how do you think we can make aviation green?
Okay, so aviation being green is via three main ways. So there's electrical airplanes, which are already being developed. Then biofuels, mainly fuels that derive from bio-waste, which is, for example, wood. Agricultural waste, for example, is used to make biofuels, and then hydrogen. There are issues with each of these solutions, namely, for example, for electricity-based airplanes, the amount of time that they can spend in the air, the size of the motors that they need in order for them to be up in the air, and the fact that it doesn't seem to compensate. The price doesn't seem to compensate. This is the main issue with biofuels as well. It's kind of like a chicken egg thing. So it's kind of like the biofuels, the current aviation industry says biofuels are way too expensive, but so we're not going to buy them. And then biofuels say, well, if you're not going to buy them, then I'm not going to make them cheaper, because you're not going to be mass buying them, and I don't have a guarantee that if I lower the price, I'm going to be selling them. So it's kind of like this issue that that they are trying to solve now. Of course, there are also storage issues with biofuels in terms of their validity, and in terms of hydrogen. Hydrogen seems to be what a lot of companies are leaning towards in terms of the solution for at least for aviation. And there's a lot of talk about green hydrogen, even blue hydrogen, though I'm still kind of absorbing the information from blue hydrogen. I'm not entirely sure how it's processed,
But
but green
blue
hydrogen,
hydrogen, you say?
yeah, blue and green.
What does
But the
blue
blue,
hydrogen mean exactly?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I know that I've heard them talk about it in conferences. So I just I don't want to talk about what I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
laying it out there in case
sure.
someone wants to know a bit more about these topics. And green hydrogen is basically it's basically using hydrogen as a fuel, which brings into play other issues, mostly storage and transportation, because it's very expensive to transport just raw hydrogen. So it would have to be either there would have to be infrastructures built that would connect the production of hydrogen directly to the places that have to use them, or hydrogen would have to be transformed into ammonia for transportation, and then once at the spot, it would be turned to hydrogen again in order to be used.
Right.
So one of the benefits from the biofuels, though, is the fact that they can just be directly added to the current aviation devices. So you don't need to change the recipient; you just need to change what is going into it, and that's a concept. That's why biofuels are also so interesting. But the issues with the pricing are still ongoing.
Yeah, but I suppose the price is going to go down the more the production is ramped up, the more the price can go down, right? But yeah, again, that's probably
Yeah, I think
the
it's
chicken
more
and
of
egg
a
problem.
yeah, I think it's more of a guarantee if the biofuel industry feels like they're going to be economically supported by the companies, then they are bound to produce more at a cheaper price. If not, then they won't.
I'm not sure if you heard about drones and eVTOLs, or I'm not even sure how to say that, but I think eVTOLs. Do you know about those? Because that's in the aviation space as well, no pun intended. But drones and eVTOLs seem to be more and more popular right now. More and more companies are focused on exactly that. Do you think drones and eVTOLs could be a solution?
Okay, so maybe you can talk a bit more about that because I haven't heard of those being
Yeah.
used as a solution to any problems
Yeah,
with the
so
bioeconomy. So yeah.
with regards to drones, you have these flying drones for passenger transportation. We've seen a Chinese company called eHang, for example, that was focusing a lot on those drones. And basically, these are just like cars that can fly almost. You can just put, I think, 2 or maybe 3 passengers in a drone like that, so not a lot. And it's just an electric autonomous vehicle, an electric autonomous drone that can simply, fly you all over the place. So that could maybe be a solution, but again, that's just for a few passengers. And the other one, eVTOLs, is a little bit similar to a drone, but it's more like a plane that can vertically take off and vertically land as well. So basically, you have a small plane that can go up and go sideways and go down, so to transport people. So I'm not sure if you think that could maybe be a solution, or yeah, if you don't know anything about that, then no problem, of course.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like just another electric car solution because I
Yeah,
don't think that those are going to be long voyage transporters, rather short voyage.
true.
So as long as with the new changes in infrastructure of cities allow for the exploration of these new technologies,
Mm.
then they can become solutions.
Yeah.
It is all a part of the design of this, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, but the thing you said, hydrogen, it could be interesting to look at hydrogen companies because I do think that could be an interesting sector to be looking at to invest in companies that are focused on that. So, do you think apart from aviation, EVs, is there another sector? I think you are really into healthcare as well because I think you have a healthcare background as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I used to work in medical research as well. I was in Spain working at a hospital in medical research, And I do think that there is a lot of potential there as well, because a lot of the again, it's an issue of supply chain and products. A lot of the products that we use in healthcare are plastic based.
Hmm.
So they're plastic based. They're single use. Same with our masks. The masks that we're throwing away, they're going to be polluting in those microplastic with those microplastic, because once you contaminate a mask with your with your breath and with your possible virus, then you need to dispose of it in a proper way. And disposing of that in a proper way means just that it's going to be destroyed, but it cannot be completely destroyed, because the microplastics are still going to degrade in that sense. And I mean, we already saw, there's already documentaries coming about of the impact that the pandemic has had in terms of plastic pollution, because of the masks, because of all of even the vaccination efforts require some type of plastic consumption. So yeah, the healthcare system and the healthcare workflow is going to be hopefully impacted by the green transition in such a way that we are going to be using materials that are either more durable, antibacterial, and antiviral, and that are also able to not be single use.
Yeah, with regards to the masks, it's definitely true, because if I take a walk, for example, or if I go on my bike and go for a few kilometers, then I also see a lot of masks just like on the street. People just drop them on the streets or something like that. It's just incredible to see that so many people just don't care about the environment. They just dispose of these masks in the nature, basically. That's really horrible to see. Do you happen to know any companies that are looking into reusable medical devices, reusable medical other products, maybe?
Well, currently I am not aware of any that are doing that. The main effort that has been done so far is not to change the actual products of the medical industry, but rather the main focus has been now on the virus.
Yeah.
So most of the medical companies have been focusing on either the genome, the gene, codifying the genome of the virus in order to find out about variants, in order to find out how to best combat it, not just with the vaccination, but also with what kind of therapies, medical therapies, are actually most viable for the curing of the virus, because that's something that is also being looked at. So yeah, I'm not sure about any specific companies, but I am sure that that the green economy is going to have an impact in many sectors, and healthcare being one of the most important sectors for the human
Yeah.
society, it's going to be impacted as well.
I can't really think about a company right now that is focusing exactly on that, on reducing the amount of medical waste. And I think that actually could be an interesting niche. If a company focuses on that, that could maybe be an interesting company to invest in as well. And also what you said, it's kind of true. It made me think a little bit that the virus almost, I'm not sure how to say this, but I think that we were focusing a lot on climate change, on trying to reduce our waste, and then the virus came along, and now our focus has shifted from that waste to the virus. So now we're just focusing on the virus, and it almost looks like we are almost losing a year and a half of our fight in reducing climate change. What do you think?
Well, if you consider the fact that most cars and planes have stopped throughout this year
Hmm.
and a half,
That's
that's
true.
already like a very, very powerful impact that I mean, we've noticed it. Didn't you notice that it was colder this year, for example,
True.
in many countries? You probably also noticed that I mean, these are still related to, of course, climate change, because we just didn't notice that because we always had that kind of smoggy greenhouse at the end of the day protection from the cold and even during the heat from us feeling the extreme heat that we do in some southeastern countries. But I think that there was a positive impact on that sense. We even saw some biodiversity return to some parks and some locations in throughout Europe, at least. It was talked about. Now,
Yeah.
are we losing a year and a half in terms of the focus? I think that the media focus has changed a bit in terms of climate change and climate awareness, um, especially because of the political crisis that is happening throughout the world. It's not just the US. It's also happening in the European Union. It happened in Africa, and I mean, we even know about Myanmar and Hong Kong. We know about those issues. So these two situations have made it kind of impossible for a smaller problem, or because when people see a long-term problem, they usually think it's smaller because it's like, well, in the next 2 years, nothing's really going to affect me, so it's fine. But these things are happening now, and then they're affecting everyone directly. So, so do I think we've lost a year and a half? Not necessarily, but the media focus not being on climate change, though it is talked about the Green New Deal and the European Green New Deal as well. They are in the mouths of politicians, but the fact that the virus has taken over has definitely impacted on the speed or the agility of climate change.
Yeah, no, you make good points. You make good points. So I actually wonder, you as a person, how are you making sure that you are doing better things for the climate? Are you reducing waste? Are you talking with your friends about this? What are you doing?
Okay, so I can give some general advice on this. It's actually kind of simple. When we see what the things that we have, we can choose to buy things that we know are sustainably made and things that we know are not sustainably made. Even if you bought something that you now found is not sustainably made, it's the sustainable action is to use it until the end of its life, or to resell it. And buying, for example, second-handed things, both electronics and clothes or clothing are ways in which we can combat the kind of system of continuous waste production, which is kind of like the capitalist society's definition of consumption as well. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, for example, is to balance your diet in order to consume meat in a lower fashion than your current consumption. So instead of eating meat 7 times a week, maybe you can eat it 4 times a week, and then the rest of the week you can have some fish or some vegetarian foods. That helps because the consumption of red meat is a positive feedback for the producers of meat, which are one of the biggest causes of climate impact. So those are, for example, 2 things that are very easy to do. If you don't want to buy second-handed clothes or second-handed electronics, don't, but use yours until the end of their life, and only then substitute them. Also, trying not to buy as many things as we feel like we need is also a good solution. For example, in terms of your soap, or in terms of your shampoo, or in terms of packaging, that things that involve packaging, you can look for alternatives that don't require you to throw away a plastic bottle every time you use it. There's powder solutions that come in glass. Glass is definitely way more recyclable than plastic. A lot of countries aren't even able to recycle plastic. It's the case with my country.
Oh,
So
really?
it's important to also, yeah, just look at that. Yeah, you can just Google like Netherlands plastic, for example, in your case, Netherlands plastic recycling, and then you can check if there's like a specific symbol in the packagings that you see that shows you that you can recycle it or not.
Okay.
In our case, it's just kind of not very good. But those
Yeah.
are just some small things we can do about that.
Yeah, I mean, you were also talking about meat. I see a lot of companies right now that are public that many people are investing in. I think a lot of people are trying to become or to eat less meat and to go more in the vegetarian route. So you have companies like the Very Good Food Company, Beyond Meat, the Tattooed Chef. I'm not sure if you know these companies, but what do you think about this movement from going from meat to a vegetarian diet?
Well, I don't completely agree with going completely vegetarian. there's a vitamin deficiency that comes with being vegetarian, and I don't. At least I don't. I know that the nutritional values are in the vegetarian diet, the same as in a meat-based diet. However, I do feel that going full vegetarian is a choice, and it's not a necessarily mandatory for everyone. And depending on your prerogative or rhetoric, then you can choose to go vegetarian or not. I'm talking about red meat, by the way, not all meats. So red meat is the most impactful one, just because you need so much space. You need a lot of space for the meat itself, and a lot of space for what the meat feeds on.
Right.
So if they feed on like all of the soy fields that are planted and everything, those are related to the meat consumption as well. So that's just a double problem that we have with the meat industry.
Yeah, you make good points. By the way, how much time do you have? I didn't even ask you before. How much time do you have for another chat?
Yeah, I have 15 more minutes.
15 more. Okay. I want to go back a little bit to you as an investor, because you, of course, are going to invest quite soon. You said within this month. You already have your buffer. You're going to start investing a little bit of your salary as well. How does that feel as a beginning investor? Are you scared, or what are your feelings?
Yeah, so as an investor, I mean, what I feel is that it's kind of like a savings account, but it's not going to be, it's not, of course, going to be just money sitting there. It's money that's being actively growing, and it's going to be actively growing in that investment bubble, let's say. And so every time you put money in, the money that you put in, instead of it being affected by inflation and reducing in value throughout the years, it's going to increase in value, because you are betting on companies that are also producing more and providing more money for the investors.
Is inflation for you one of the? Is inflation one of the most important reasons for you to invest, by the way, or is it another reason?
It was, well, as I said before, it was kind of a personal belief of mine that my money should go into the things I believe in. Okay. So that's why I wanted to challenge myself into. Well, it feels like it's a huge step. I know it's not.
Yeah.
But the idea that we have associated to our money is that investing is risky, or investing is kind of like, you never know if you're going to lose your money someday, or it's just going to completely disappear. And there are studies proving that that doesn't happen. Like, long-term investment usually provides a lot more money than any other type of investment, at least in a safe way or in a surer way. Yeah. But it does feel kind of a little scary still, even though I've been even talking to you and informing myself about the process. It's still kind of like, okay, I'm doing this, and I have to. It's kind of like you have to like gather some courage, as if when you're like jumping from a cliff into the water. You know,
exactly.
It's like, it takes you like 5 minutes to think about it, and then you actually do it.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, especially for everyone, it seems a very huge step, and it seems very scary, and it seems like you're jumping off a cliff. But I think if you start dipping your toes in the water first, just to start very small, then it's actually going to be quite normal. I would say it's not going to actually be such a huge step. So it's probably just a matter of starting out, just dipping your toe in the investment world, and then go from there. Are you going to do that as well?
Yeah. So as you said, and if we're trying to make the metaphor more clearer, dipping your toe would mean having some sense of management of your money and having an idea of how to manage your money. So the buffer that we were talking about is basically making sure that at least for around 6 months, your expenses are covered with the extra money that you have. And then the money that goes away from that, or for an emergency, the buffer is also for emergency. But in case that you're going over that buffer, then that money can either be sitting there and waiting for you to spend it, or it can be invested. And if you already know that there aren't any major purchases or any major investments, like direct investments that you want to use and that you want to put your money in, then you can just invest it in index funds or in ETFs if you're looking at long term and safer, or directly in companies as you do. Which is a bit riskier and requires a bit more knowledge, which I don't have. So that's my approach to it. Kind of.
Yeah, I think it's just a process as well. You can just start out the way you do, for example, and maybe at some point you say, well, I got some time left over. Let's just investigate some companies, maybe some healthcare companies that are trying to focus on the bioeconomy, maybe some electric vehicle companies, maybe some aviation hydrogen companies, you know. So that could, of course, be interesting as well in at some point in the future. But I do think that getting off zero is one of the most important things for people out there, just to actually get started. And then when you get off zero, then you can actually continue to build more and more on what you already invested in. I'm just wondering, are you also talking about this with your friends, your family, about investing?
Yeah, so I did start talking to some friends of mine that I know have a more entrepreneurial mindset. And funny enough, we were all kind of like gearing towards the same direction in terms of feeling like we wanted to invest our money and we wanted to grow our money in that way. And so I have been talking to them about it. There are people that no matter how much you talk to them about these things, they still find it risky, they still find it scary, and they're just not going to do it because they have the mindset of, I'm going to save all my money. Like, as we say in Portuguese, save it under your mattress, you know, like mattress money, and just leave it there until you have to use it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it looks like everyone thinks it's so risky, but I think it's almost more risky to just hold cash for the long term compared to investing for the long term. Because as you said before, investing for the long term is generally a good thing. You make money instead of lose money. But with just holding cash and putting that under your mattress, as they say in Portuguese, you're just almost guaranteed to lose money because of inflation. So yeah, I just wonder, what can we do? I'm not sure if you have an opinion about this, but what could we do to kind of convince people that investing for the long term isn't as risky as they might think?
So I think well, in my opinion, it mostly comes down to education. I think I hadn't been taught that you could invest. I had no idea how to invest. So of course, when you don't know anything about a topic, it becomes scary, especially when it's portrayed in the media as you know, those frantic Wall Street trading that caused so much pain and so much well, you know, like all of the when the crash happened in with the Wall Street crash. It caused so much pain for so many families, and it caused so many losses for the investors. But when you associate the image of investing with the images portrayed in the media of just frantically running around, yelling at everyone, invest in that immediately, that's going up, or you know, like take all of your money out of that stock because that's going down. Like, I don't think anyone wants to live in those stressful conditions, and that's why investment kind of becomes kind of like a boogeyman because you're not informed enough.
I think that's a very good point. I think right now on YouTube, for example, you see just a lot of channels that are focusing a lot on the emotions. They're trying to play with the emotions of investors. If something goes down, they are like, oh my God, this is going to crash. And if something is going to go up, it's like, oh my God, this is going to go to the moon. So I kind of think that the education part is very important here, that we just need to like almost calmly educate people about the options that they have, and that just investing is generally better than just holding your cash. So I think that's a very, very good point, and maybe that's a good point to leave it almost off here as well, to not to make this interview too long, of course. Do you have any final thoughts with regards to the things we've been talking about, bioeconomy, what people can do, investing, whatever? Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So I can tell you that my idea of investment is going to be towards, of course, green transition, but also maybe for starting investors, I would tell them that the safest bets are in the established companies and established index funds that have established companies in them. And then I would vouch for investing in things that are already established in society and that aren't really going to change that much. For example, one thing that I noticed is utilities. I mean, there are index funds for utilities, and that sounds to me like a very interesting investment because they're always going to be here and they're always going to be used by everyone. So as long as companies are just doing their thing, we will continue to have utilities, and investing on utilities will probably give you money in the long term. Investing in the green economy as well. And of course, I think that the main final thought I have is that being scared is normal, and especially when it's related to your money, because especially in the current crisis, we saw a lot of people just immediately and out of the blue losing their jobs or being laid off to having 60% of their income instead of their full income. So it is scary to be so dependent on something and just feeling like you're letting that something go for a future return. But if you have the ability to do it, then, or the ability to let go of that fear, then I think that investment is a very good solution for, or a very good way to use your money.
I think that's a beautiful thought to close off with. Where can people find you if they want to chat with you a little bit more about all of this stuff?
So if you want to chat with me, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
My name is on LinkedIn is Gonçalo with a C like this, Filipe with an F, and Rodrigues with an S at the end. So the last name is Rodrigues.
I think if it's okay with you, I can just put the link in the description for the people to follow you on LinkedIn, if that's okay with you as well.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Cool. We're going to
I
do
definitely
that.
love to talk to people who are interested in this topic.
So if you have any questions for Gonçalo, you can just hit him up on LinkedIn. Gonçalo, thank you very much for your time. It's been a very interesting chat, and I think we've got some new ideas for investing in certain companies in the future as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, with that being said, thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Have a great day.